What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel episode 13. This episode is called Prepare to Fail, and this episode is one that people have been looking forward to a lot because it introduces a character that people have been wanting to see in the show for quite some time, and that is the character Brax. Yes, Brax is finally introduced in this episode, and we'll get into that right away. Because Brax is introduced, and so is Tynamon. Tynamon and Brax are characters that were a lot bigger in Japan. They're being introduced fairly late, which, I mean, Brax was introduced pretty late to begin with in Japan, so it actually does make sense that he's introduced when he is. So just keep that in mind for anyone that was wondering when. Finally happens. So in this episode, what does end up happening is that we're introduced to the two of them. What we do end up seeing is that like they have a plan, and Tynamon is kind of working alongside Brax, and Brax is his warrior, and the idea is that they have a plan to deal with the Rangers. In the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that the Rangers are in school, and they're getting back their test scores from a math test that they took, probably the previous day, I believe it was. And the idea is that everyone gets back their grades. A lot of them did pretty well, but the one person that did really, really well was Sarah. Sarah got an A+. The only people that failed were Victor and Monty. They both got Fs. And what happens is that, for starters, Sarah, seeing that she's the only one that got an A+, thinks, oh, she can take it easy on the next test, which will be the second part that they'll be taking tomorrow. So she treats it that way. She tries to act like, who cares at this point? I can go easy. It's probably going to be an easy test like this one was, and no brainer. So that's what she puts her mind towards. At the same time, we end up seeing that Victor and Monty have a plan so that they can deal with the test and not have to study as much, which is something that they just don't do anyway. They don't really study or take the time to do it. So what ends up happening is that in the meantime, the Rangers end up going out, and Sarah says that she wants to go to the movies, she wants to go see some great movie or whatever, and the other Rangers are all like studying, trying to prepare themselves for tomorrow's test, and she's just taking it easy, and they're all like, why are you acting this way? How do you know that this test will be just as easy? And she's just like, come on, of course she's gonna make it easy. And so they constantly treat it like she treats it like it's gonna be an easy test, and she really goes out of her way to say that. Eventually, what happens is that Levi ends up getting interrupted by some fans of his, because he's Levi Weston, and they all want his autograph. Following this, what happens is that the Rangers are met by Brax, Tynamon, Badana, and also some Basher bots. What happens is that Brax is used in the fight, and Brax pretty much gets beaten up fairly easily. He retreats quickly, and everyone else does as well. Even the Basherbots do, which the Basherbots are actually stronger than Brax seems to be. So at this point, the Rangers all think Brax is a pushover. Brax is easy. Brax is someone that you could easily defeat without any issues at all. And that's their mindset. And they eventually return back to the base. And also what happens is that before that, Levi joins them. And when he joins them, he finds out that he really didn't miss anything. The battle was so simple that they really didn't even need him. But when they return back to the base, they end up discussing things with Mick and Redbot, and what happens is that they're a little surprised by the fact that there was a Galaxy Warrior that was this weak, because there's always been at least a little bit stronger than this, and this just seemed over the top. So anyway, what does end up happening is that the others end up discussing things, and they mention the test, and this makes them realize, oh, we should start studying. Thing is that Sarah still wants to go see the movie and doesn't really think about studying. And at the same time, since everyone's going up, Mick brings up the idea that, hey, you were working on a special weapon for us, why don't we work on it now, which is the Superstar Blade. The Superstar Blade is a special blade that we learn about a little bit later in the episode, but it's pretty powerful. It's supposed to be a more powerful version of the regular ninja blade that they tend to use, so keep that in mind. So what happens is that Mick asks if she wants to do it, but she says no, and I'd rather not do it today. I'd rather take it easy and go to the movies, and if I want to get there on time, I better zoom on over with my hoverboard. And so at that point, she grabs her hoverboard and she ends up riding off to the movie theater. At this point, what happens is that we end up hearing from Brax inside of the Galaxy Warrior Dome, because they're a little surprised by the fact that Brax seemed like such a weakling, because he was referred to as being this warrior that had conquered like 12 different like planets or galaxies or something like that. I forget the exact words that they said, but he was referred to as being this super powerful enemy. Thing is that this clearly showed that he wasn't that strong, but he then gets up and shows his true strength and says, I intentionally fooled the Rangers to make them lower their guards. That was his goal. His goal was to lower their guards in that first battle, so that way the next time that he comes back, he can destroy them because they won't see him coming. So that's his plan. So then following this, what ends up happening is that we end up seeing the next day. The next day, what happens is that the Rangers end up taking their test. Sarah, when she receives her test, is in shock over it, because she's like, is this my test for real? She even asked her teacher, like, is this really the test? And the reason why is because she didn't study, and the material that she's seeing is way harder than what she had to deal with the day prior. So she's panicked. And then following this, everyone that gets their test, starts. But Victor and Monty, when they get their test, it's interesting to note because they mentioned no food, no drinking, none of that stuff during the test. Thing is, we see that the garbage can is full of beans. That is because Victor and Monty decided to eat beans, lots and lots of beans, to make it so that they would fart to the point where no one would want to be in the room and that they'd have to postpone the test. That was their plan. And Sarah is all in favor of this because she didn't even study. But this time the teacher was prepared for this situation because apparently she's had this happen before. And so she ends up giving all the students, except for Victor and Monty, gas masks. So at that point, they're able to take their test regardless of the smell in the air, which Victor and Monty are constantly creating more and more gas. Yes, it's another one of those gas episodes with farting and beans or something disgusting. It's one of those weirder episodes that people just don't really like. And I wouldn't say, like, that part of it I didn't like, but seeing Brax, seeing a number of other things that were in this episode was good. That was just the one area where I would say we definitely didn't need it, but I get what they were trying to do, and I understand the humor that they're trying to go for this generation, even though it's not the best. It's really not. It could be so much better. But anyway, what does happen is that Mr. Nappy has the power to do this test. They try to answer the questions as they fart away, and eventually they run out of the room. At one point, when they fart, they propel themselves out of the room, breaking the front door for the teacher is room, and he's like, you have to fix that. situation, a hard test, a hard opponent. That real life situation, and also this test, it's that connection that makes her realize what she should have been doing when it came to studying, and also what they need to do in order to deal with Brax. Because even though he may have seemed easy one time, doesn't mean that he'll be easy the next time. They could always make him stronger. And so at that point, Sarah realizes, hey, we need to be prepared. So I'm going to start working on the Superstar Blade. So she actually gets to work on it with Mick. We end up seeing that done. At the same time, the others begin to train. They begin to do a lot of ninja training, which is very cool, and they do it inside the base. And eventually, the Superstar Blade is done, and their training finishes as well. With the Superstar Blade, all the Rangers are able to access it, and they're also able to use the strength of the Lion Fire star. So that's very important. That attachment now can be placed on it and create that strength. Now that doesn't mean that they transform into the Lion Fire armor. It just means that they can use the power from it. That's something to note, of course. You would think that it would allow for both. From this, we don't see that, but that's not how it works. So keep that in mind, but it's supposed to be a much stronger blade than the standard ninja blade. So following this, what happens is that the buzz cams are looking around for the Rangers. They can't seem to find them, and eventually what happens is that the Rangers come out to fight, and Brax ends up having to deal with them. The Rangers decide to initiate their plan, which is to start off with like a blasting attack, a whiplash attack, followed by all the different forms of the ninja blade, including the final attack with, I think it was like Brody and Levi do it, and then there's also the bow mode for their weapons. It was the bow mode, the claw mode, and there was also the blade mode that were used to do finishing attacks. So each one of those was done, which is very cool. It's great to see all three used, because typically we don't see all these different moves used. We typically see like one or two, sometimes three, but the fact that we saw like all these moves in conjunction with each other, and then like even the finisher and all that stuff, and then on top of that we end up seeing the Superstar Blade used, which is really cool because they end up doing this like awesome finishing attack where like each of them basically goes in and does a finishing move that destroys Brax. And it's pretty awesome to see that. Eventually what happens is that we end up seeing that Cosmo Royale wants to summon some Skull Gators rather than making Brax big. So that's something to note. Usually you would think that they would want Brax to retreat, but in this case, Badana shows up, and she ends up saying, no, we're not going to do that. So she presses the Gigantify button to make Brax big, and then what happens is that the Rangers end up summoning two Megazords. They summon the Ninja Steel Megazord and the Blaze Megazord, which is interesting. Has to do with the actual episode in Japan, even though in reality this doesn't make any sense, again, based on what had happened in episode 11. Just keep it in mind that for some reason they never really connected that point. I'm probably guessing that they won't either. Explain the fact that the Ninja Steel Megazord wasn't working and now it is. I guess they just are avoiding that whole topic, which is fine. It's just kind of weird in a way because it's sort of like they made it a bigger deal in earlier episodes, and yet they never specifically said that it was fixed. I guess it must have been, and that's all we can go off of from there, but it would have been nice if they specifically said it. And unless I'm mistaken, I don't think they did. So, anyway, what happens is we end up seeing these two Megazords used, which is pretty cool. Then what happens is that as they're fighting and Brax isn't doing super well, what happens is that Badana ends up summoning a whole bunch of Skull Gators. She actually summons 4 Skull Gators to fight alongside Brax, and Brax decides to take it easy, kind of showing the same kind of mindset that the Rangers felt before and Sarah felt before with the test. Basically, he thinks it's going to be an easy situation, when in reality they're not weak. So what happens is that we actually see multiple Megazord modes being used. We actually see the Rumble Tusk Megazord formation, the Astro Megazord formation, the Subsurfer Megazord formation, all being used in this episode, which is really cool to see all those formations used. And then they also do like their finishing moves, which is very cool. It would have been great as well if they even went as far as to have the Lion Fire Zord used, but I do understand like limitations and you know, it doesn't make sense to always have that there, which is fine. So it is good to see all that, and it was nice to see the Ninja Steel Megazord and also the Blaze Megazord used in combat alongside each other. That is the first time we've actually seen that in the show so far, so that's also a really great thing to see. And in the end, they do manage to defeat the Skull Gators and Brax. As far as things go in the next scene, what we do end up seeing is that Sarah ends up talking to her teacher after Victor and Monty are finished repairing the door. And what happens is that she mentions that she studied for all the questions that she got wrong, and she apologizes for not, treating the test like it could be hard. And she tries to show that she understands her mistake, and she's willing to, fess up for her error. And what happens is the teacher respects her for this, and she's willing to give her a retest that she can take the next day, which makes Sarah super happy, her friends super happy, and the Rangers are just in general in a very good spirit. Same time, Victor and Monty are by the door, and the thing is that Monty sees some beans and he decides to eat it because he's hungry, because they were working on the door and everything. And the thing is that Victor's not so confident that he should be eating those beans, because what if the door breaks again? Well, what happens is that he does eat the beans, and that's exactly what happens. The door breaks down because Monty's stomach starts to react again, and he farts, breaking the door behind him. And at that point, Victor and Monty are freaking out because they're like, oh, again, now they have to fix it again. So that's about it. This episode again was mostly good. Again, the farting stuff, I really wish it wasn't there, but I know the humor that they're going for with their audience, so I'm not surprised by it. I just think that it would be better if they changed it. That's how I see it. As far as things go otherwise, I am looking forward to next episode. I can't wait to see Sheriff Skyfire being introduced, because that's going to be very interesting because of the fact that they're actually adapting the episode that Jiraiya was from. If you've watched Metal Heroes, if you've watched the Japanese show, you'll know what I'm talking about, but a lot of people have been talking about it just because it's pretty amazing, the fact that they're even using this character, and the fact that they even got the suit for this character, because again, this character really hasn't been used outside of the series, and they haven't really done anything with Metal Heroes in forever. I mean, they did stuff with Power Rangers and Metal Heroes years ago, but it wasn't this. This is pretty special, and this is really recent, so that's pretty interesting to note. Otherwise, that's about it for me, guys. So please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'd love to know your opinions about these episodes. About this episode, and see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.